Diet and exercise are so pre-pandemic. The new way to lose weight is through diabetes drugs. Even Elon Musk tweeting his endorsement of the drug Wegovy. What's the investor story behind this and other diabetes drugs in demand now? Michael Nedelcovych is the Vice President of Equity Research at Cowen. Good to see you, sir. So Novo is the only company with FDA approval to market Wegovy. They also make Ozempic in that category. And you have a $130 price target on Novo. How much does that factor in what could be a game changer in weight loss?
Yeah, so, Novo Nordisk is one of the leaders in diabetes, and they're really an execution story. They market one of the marquee drugs in what's called the GLP-1 class. That's the drug Ozempic that you mentioned, which is indicated for diabetes treatment. And this class of drugs, where, as I mentioned, Novo is one of the leaders, is growing at a double-digit rate. And that seems to be something we can expect for the foreseeable future. So based almost entirely on their prospects in diabetes, we think Novo Nordisk is a company that investors should take a look at. In the meantime, they have this outsized opportunity in obesity treatment. Obesity is a market that, at least to date, has not materialized in a real way for various reasons, but we think that that is poised to change, and Novo Nordisk is really the tip of the spear and is well positioned to take advantage of what could be a multi-billion-dollar opportunity over the next few years.
Yeah, Michael,
and Wegovy is the marquee drug there.
Yeah, Michael, give us a better sense just on when you talk about the massive opportunity there, how big it could be in 5 years from now. What more specifically do you think that number could potentially look like?
Yeah, so I'll actually defer in part to Novo Nordisk guidance. So their ambition is to sell 25 billion DKK in 2025. That's roughly 5 billion or so, a little bit less in US dollars, in obesity drugs. So, that kind of brings estimates down to earth a little bit. If you look at just the number of people in the US and globally that have obesity or overweight, it's hundreds of millions. And so you can get to some eye-watering estimates pretty quickly if you dial up the penetration rate. Historically, a hurdle to penetration of these drugs has been payers and market access. We think that's beginning to change, but that will probably be a headwind that brings estimates closer to where Novo Nordisk's mind is for 2025 and beyond.
Stunning number on our screen. Nearly 42% of this country is obese. I know you do not cover Eli Lilly, but the FDA did agree to a quick review of their competitive drug, which is Mounjaro. Are they similar in makeup and how they work? And how does this change the cap, the ceiling for Novo?
Yeah, so I'll quibble just a little bit with your question there. The FDA is requiring 2 of the 4 phase 3 trials for the drug is called tirzepatide from Lilly before they'll review it for obesity. And those are already due to read out in kind of Q2, Q3 of 2023. So it might not be all that quick, although it is quicker than perhaps it could have been. But, in a market like obesity, which is really nascent, and as I said, we think is beginning to materialize in a real way, the phrase "a rising tide lifts all boats" probably has never applied more. So Lilly entering the market with tirzepatide, which is a highly effective weight loss drug, it acts similarly to the way that Novo Nordisk Wegovy does. It is perhaps slightly more efficacious, perhaps slightly less tolerable, although that's to be determined in real world use. It's probably good for both companies, and we think there are more than enough patients to address with both drugs.
Michael, what can you tell us just about the cost of these drugs?
Yeah, so we know the list prices. So Wegovy, just as an example, has a list price around $1,500 a month. But if it's covered by your insurance, you would pay something well below that. So out of pocket, we don't anticipate in the U.S. at least it'll be a major out of pocket market for these drugs. They're probably too expensive.
Very interesting. How do both of these work? Are all of these drugs in this category essentially appetite suppressants and therefore really BandAids that you'd have to stay on potentially indefinitely?
Yeah, so they do work primarily through appetite suppression, although there's some other mechanisms where they provide health benefits. You should, if you're on one of these drugs, physicians should keep a patient on them indefinitely. And there's solid data that demonstrates that if the patient goes off, then the weight comes back. So that's how they're labeled. That's how they're intended to be used. We'll see in the real world what treatment durations actually look like. But it's not really a Band-Aid in that sense. Obesity is an illness, and these are drugs that are meant to treat that illness in a way that's very similar to diabetes, where it's a chronic disease and they need to be treated chronically.
Michael Nedelcovych of Cowen, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate your insight.
Yeah, thank you.